Carl Ellis Grant is an actor, host, writer, comic, and engineer. His professional acting career began after graduating from Morgan State University in 2012. Finding himself on the set of House of Cards in Baltimore, Maryland, he knew that acting was the career for him. Upon moving to Dallas, Texas a year later to pursue a career as an aeronautical engineer, he shortly learned he wanted more for himself, acting on weekends and days off before ultimately leaving his position at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics to pursue a full-time career in acting in 2015. Since then, he has performed in cities across the country, and finally finding himself residing back home in Brooklyn, New York. Carl is currently the host of Another Shade of Crime on Apple and Spotify, donning himself the voice of Black True Crime. A New York native, Carl intends to create a national presence for himself through theater, film, stand-up, and voiceover. You can keep up with Carl on social media at Carl Ellis Grant. That's CarlEllisGrant. Because this is only the second time we've really talked, the first time being on Lit Video Books, I've gotten to know bits of your personality through Instagram, but I really spend as little time as possible on social media.
Good.
Yeah, it's my mind is so much healthier now. But because of my career, obviously I have to be on social media. So so here and there I've caught little bits of your stand-up bits. You're a grinder like all of us. Um,
I appreciate that.
yeah. But you were just referencing your dad, art entering your life from your dad because your dad was a mathematician and a master drawer. So that influenced you at an early age. And part of being a professional artist is I think you have to be both right and left brained. Yeah,
I agree.
you have that creative part, of course, is why you're doing what you're doing. But if you don't know how to spin 20 plates at a time, it's not going to work
Mm,
because the one of those 20 plates is performing your art. The rest of it is balancing your life, your family, your money, your sleep, your self tapes. I mean, there's all this stuff. You seem like a guy with your head on your shoulders, like your head's on straight, and it sounds like that comes from your dad. Yeah.
yeah, I think a combination actually, my dad and my mom. My mom, like I said, always pushed us to greater pastures. She always was making sure, like, hey, when this is what your life's gonna be like, and you're gonna have to go further in whatever you choose to do. So just with that, and then also they both were, working class individuals, and but I think my father being an artist and a mathematician, he worked in the board of ed for about, I want to say 30 plus years. And he was like the math guy in the board of ed. And, it just taught me that there's a possibility to have art and, let's say, logic, for a better term, uh, as a part of your lifestyle or career you choose. So I always, even when I was studying, engineering, I always thought, like, well, what about that art thing, or what about that music thing, or why not give that a shot? My sister was different. My sister's an actress. She I feel like she just knew from the beginning, or so she was doing theater as a kid, and she's like those theater kids we meet along our journey that know every song of every musical, and the things that excite her, I believe, theatrically, I'm very naive about, which also I believe makes me an interesting artist, because a lot of or interesting actor, I guess, because a lot of good actors come from different backgrounds. So always just kept that in mind, as I grew as a person. That, hey, you can try things. Comedy. Comedy is, like, I consider comedy my newest baby. I've only been doing that for 2 years, and I don't want to say things are moving fast, but things that I thought would happen later on just happened. I have my own show now, and that's something that was just thrown at me based on the way I was grinding and putting myself out there. So yeah, I think just it's you gotta. I feel like all artists, are not limited to any medium. We can go anywhere. I think it's just once you But every medium has the different types of artists and what they're trying to do with it. And because I have so many niche individuals in my life, like one of my friends is a ranked gamer, you know what I'm saying? He's like, I played video games with him growing up, but he took it to a whole nother place where, he plays Street Fighter for money and in tournaments. And I'm like, we just did this on Sundays before South Park, but I feel like because the individuals around me were just so niche in what they wanted to do, I was always seeking and trying to figure out what it is I wanted my mark to be, or and maybe I haven't even found it yet. I think that's the scary part. You would think like, oh, you've done so many things, but it's like maybe there might be that one thing that you really wanted to do you haven't tried yet.
Art came to your life early on. How old would you say you are, or you were?
I would say I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I think I started dancing at that time.
And that was so was it your dad's African dance thing, or what was going on?
I actually believe that was probably a combination of both my parents making a decision for us. We were in like an after school program, myself and my sister. I believe the name was Indota Incha, and it was ran by these people with strong ties to their African roots. And I believe it was just a combination of us learning the roots that we come from, but it's through different ways, through martial arts, through dance. I remember learning to play the drums there, not what we call a drum set, but like the djembe and the
Yeah.
bongos. Yeah, so and then we also went out and performed at schools. I remember my first performance was at my school, and it was probably the scariest moment of my life. I remember the curtains open, my shirt's off, and it's like, oh, this is over. I'm done. I'm done at this. And I was finished. Like I had to fight my way out of that school. So but it makes you don't. I want to say when I was a child, I rebelled against it. I don't want to do this anymore. But now if you look back, there's so many things I can say that I'm grateful for, because now as now that we're in these imaginary circumstances all the time, I have so many things to pull from. And I have a joy personally in my day to day with auditions, not only auditioning, but like even helping friends with auditions. Like I read for my mentor, who's also an actor, and I read for a lot of friends of mine, and they're always curious to ask, like, where did that come from? And I'm like, unbeknownst to you, my imagination is probably insane at this point, just because I've been exposed to so many things.
Did you and your sister, there's a 2 year age gap. Did you guys do art together at any point, or was this just you kind of following your own artistic course?
No, we shared some of this similar experiences. She did some dance. She did the African dance as well. She learned how to play the drums as well. She did the tap and ballet as well. I think, but I feel like she took all of that and put it all straight into theater. I think I don't know what instrument she chose to play. I feel like the moment when I chose the instrument is when she chose maybe theater at the time. And yeah, and then I ended up coming back to her, when I first had the idea to even think about acting, and just asking her the most naive of questions. What's this? What's cut? I remember asking like literally the most um uh what's the most like basic questions, you know what I mean? Like, and and she was really the one that encouraged me to even give it a shot. She was like, you could probably do this. And I was always like, nah. I'm like, I'm good. I'm like, NASA's enough for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm humble in that way. And she's like, well, don't rule it out. It might work out. And I think people, in my life know that I have when I put my mind to something, I get, similar to the conversation we had about the marathon. I'm just very okay. Let's how do we draw this path? And yeah, so yeah, I feel like we were on the same path, but just had different interests. And yeah.
When does the engineering stuff enter your life?
I would attest that to I always been the type of person like I was the kid like taking stuff apart, like my parents may take me like come to work with me and I would probably like venture off and go break something on somebody's desk and then like challenge myself to put it back together before they showed up and getting instead of getting in trouble. So I would say that might have been like the spark, but like I said, I tested very much the video games, like we're all communicating and interacting in the digital world now, but I feel like video games is my first inkling of interacting in the digital world. But I would have to really most honestly, I think the nail in the coffin was like, oh, I really need to try this. Was a high school teacher. He was my math teacher in high school. He was a kooky dude, man. Like his name was Mr. Freese. I remember because I was like a class clown in high school, so I was always making jokes. And then one day at class, I remember like making the last joke, like the joke right before the bell rings. And to me, that was like a cherry on top. You know what I'm saying? The whole class is laughing, and then the bell rings, and we gotta go. I'm like, it's kind of like ending your set as a stand-up with a joke. And I remember leaving. I'm in like an accelerated class at this time. Like I'm with like juniors and seniors. I'm a freshman. And Mr. Freak's like, Carl, let me talk to you. I'm like, man, like, come on. This is my moment. You gotta let me bask in my moment. And he was like, you should really consider engineering. And I'm like, Mr. Freeze, like, come on. I'm like, come on, you gotta be out of, you gotta be kidding. He's like, no, man. He's like, I used to work with bombs, in my profession as an engineer. I was like, oh, all right, now you got my attention. You know what I'm saying? Like if you were blowing shit up, I'm like, I want to blow shit up. And he's like, yeah, just go home and do some research and think about it. And I remember even going home. This is like I was like the kid with a computer at home too. And I remember like spelling the term wrong, like trying to Google the term engineering and spelling it wrong and it was just, it just reminded me of just watching like a PBS documentary. I was like, oh, this is boring as hell. Like, why would I do this? And then ultimately, I actually was gonna do architecture. That's what I studied in high school. I was doing design and architecture. But when I got to college, it just seemed as if engineering would open more doors. It was just like a good guess. Like I was firmly going to become an architecture major, but then I did a internship my freshman year doing interior design, and I met a lot of architects. And it was like, man, you don't want to do it. Like they all were so upset with architecture. And I was like, well, maybe I should give that engineering thing a shot. And it ended up being the best decision for me. I ended up going into software. My degrees in electrical and computer engineering. And then I ended up getting like a niche in aeronautics. And it was just the best decision. It was like, I remember even like, I mean, I always was a smart kid, but my grades never reflected it because I just, didn't put as much emphasis or I didn't put I always had my report cards always said the same thing. If Carl would just apply himself, what I'm saying, he would be excellent. So I think once I was able to apply myself to engineering, that's when I feel like, yeah, it became a real thing. So I would attest it to Mr. Freeze. I hope he's still living, still teaching math somewhere.
So that inevitably led you to NASA at some point.
Yeah, college did. I was doing research in college, I believe my sophomore year or junior year of college, and I was working in this like visualization laboratory, and I was actually working on the Microsoft Surface before it was a tablet. It was a table. I don't know if people might have remembered that, but it was like a huge table interface, and it's like their whole thing was you could come to a hotel, put your phone down, then the phone populates options, and I was working on like with the Army doing research on that, and I remember they came and had a meeting one day and it's like, hey, we have, opportunities for some of our researchers to intern at NASA if you're interested. And for me, that was just like a light bulb because that, as a kid, I wanted to, be an astronaut. As a kid, I remember writing that as a kid and I was like, yeah, yes. I'm like, of course. So the first opportunity I had, I took it, and it was great, and even at NASA, um, I was different. I remember telling NASA no the first time. The first time they tried to get me to become an intern, I said no because they wanted me to be behind a computer the whole summer. And I was like, I don't want to go to NASA and be behind a computer no matter what the hell we're doing. I'm like, I want to do stuff. So I feel like they took that as a joke and gave me a job in maintenance. I was working like for this guy that worked on everything in Langley, what was Langley at the time. And I got to see everything. I think that was the best thing for me because it showed me not only what I didn't want to do, it showed me what I wanted to do. So I ended up going back to the computer and doing software as a result. But being able to go and, be in like these huge wind tunnels and doing like, vibration analysis and taking stretch assignments on like solar panels, on satellites, those things like show me like, oh, I don't necessarily want to do that, but it also opened my mind like, well, what is all these things going to need? And I think like in 09, 2009, I said, I'm just going to focus on software. And at that time, nobody wanted to do it. I was like one of the only people in my class that was like just everything. So I was just everything software. Something just told me, and it just made me marketable everywhere. Like what we know is the Internet of Things now, IoT. I was working on in 2008. I'm coming home telling my parents like, your TV is gonna connect to your phone. They're like, that doesn't even make sense. I'm like, I know. So yeah, it's just and it's even worse now. It's even worse now. You know what I mean? And I've been blessed to work on some advanced things that I'm seeing come to fruition today. My last project that I didn't ultimately get to work on, but I was asked to work on, which is crazy. I mean, it blows me to this day. In a pandemic, everything's like shut down. I was contacted by Apple to work on what is now their VR, the Vision Pro. And I almost did it. I was like this close from taking the position, but I didn't ultimately. But then when it came out, I was like, this is what it was? I'm like, damn, I'm upset now, they don't, so, but it's just also, it's still cool to even be considered, I think, it's kind of like an actor, like, it's always um, a blessing to even be considered for something, nevertheless chosen. So yeah, I still have that right side of my brain is very much still active, and I apply it to so many other things now. I apply it to filmmaking, I make music now, I apply it to that. That's like that's a whole science project in itself every single time. So yeah, man, it's interesting. Yeah, NASA was a very interesting experience for me. I met NASA, what I would tell people is one of the places where you can like do anything because it's such a research-based facility. There were people out there in chicken suits and different color hair, but as long as they were getting their work done, that was it. And I think I went around the time they had their last flight, or before the one that they had recently in the last couple of years. I think it was like 2010. They had that last flight in Florida. So, I was I remember all the kids went to Florida to see the last, at the time that it was supposed to be the last launch. And I just didn't go. I was like, why would I even go to that? But now I'm thinking about it like, damn, I probably should have went, but now we have so many other, there's no like space isn't as sexy as it used to be, unfortunately. You send somebody like William Shatner into space and he comes back like it was a horrible experience. It's like, you're not making space sexy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember living in Dallas, that's when I had my last job with the government. Ex-girlfriend of mine was teaching at a school, and she was like, Carl, you should come to my school today. There's going to be astronauts there. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going. Like, what? I was there in a suit. I was the first person there. And I was watching these astronauts talk to these kids. And I'm like, y'all not making these kids want to become astronauts. Like, they were making it was so boring. I was like, yo, if I went to space, my story would be so much more fun. Like, yo, all aliens do exist. Like, I saw them, you know what I mean? You couldn't, what are you gonna go check it out yourself? The only way you could go is want to become one. So yeah, I felt like, yeah, man, like we have to, I'm happy science is cool now. That's all I can really say. Cause I guess growing up it wasn't as cool. You know, to be smart wasn't as cool. Everyone's a nerd now. Everyone's some level of nerd now. I'm like, wow, like this is crazy. I wish I would have caught on to this when, when I was learning systems, embedded systems 10, 15 years ago. But hey, it's good to be ahead. That's what I'll say. It's good to be ahead.
Is engineering like your survival gig, and then you do art outside of that, or what goes on?
Actually, no, I haven't had a survival gig in probably like 6 years now. I've been like a full-time artist. I know it feels good to say, but there's ups and downs. But yeah, I mean, um, yeah, yeah, my survival gig is plan A. I'm all plan A. I've been like that for a while, even through the pandemic, even through the strike. In the strike, I found these comedy shows. So I end up getting to the point where I'm paying myself, which is I think great. But yeah, like it's still, we know how this industry goes. You got to be ready for any and everything. Yeah, but even all the engineers I worked with, like my last job was with Lockheed Martin, all those engineers were musicians. They had other things going on. So I felt like, damn, like what if they just did that? Like, so I wanted to be the exception to the rule. And I'm still working on it. I love it. I love like trying to make it happen. I think that's where I really find the real joy. It's every day. It's an everyday thing.
I'm with you. I'm on that same journey, man. It feels really good. Like there's only so many of us that are only doing art. I mean, even though we're in New York. So speaking of New York, so you're a native, so have you never left like to live somewhere for a period of time?
I have actually. I went to college in Baltimore, Maryland. I went to Morgan State University. Um, the Morgan State, I have to say now, because we're a national treasure. And I lived there for about 5 years. When I worked for NASA, that was a summer in Virginia. That was great. And then shortly, maybe a year after I graduated, I moved to Dallas, Texas. I was living there for about, I want to say 3, 4 years. So and it was great. I think that's where I really ultimately became an actor because I was just on my own in a new city and doing something completely different. And it just, I think, when you're on your own, I'm sorry, this is Brooklyn. When you're on your own, it does make you, you know what I'm saying? It makes you into the person you are. And I believe, me, you know me as a personable person and someone who easily to talk to. And that's who I was on my own. And people just I was pushed to acting as a result of that. Like it's funny, I let acting go. I did the play, going back to the Shakespeare. I did the play that was in Baltimore. That was like in between the time when I graduated and moved to Dallas. I actually did my first acting gig technically was on House of Cards. I did that. And then I was like, this is cool. I was like, that was it. I did it. Like, yo, my family saw me on stage. They saw me on TV. I was like, yo, what else I gotta do? I'm thinking like I'm good. And so I said, I'm gonna go to work now. And I ultimately moved to Dallas to work for Lockheed. And I was in a bar one day and a woman came up to me and was like, hey, like, I really want you to be in my play. And I'm like, no, I did one of those before. This might not work out for me. And she's like, no, no. And I think, just being open at that time, because I was just out there searching. I feel like I thought I had figured out what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I think people who choose to work in aeronautics for the rest of their life are great. You know what I'm saying? The money's not going anywhere. People want to fly all the time. And defense is not getting any less money year to year. So I look at it like, I was like, hey, maybe this could just work out for me. As a kid from Brooklyn, you look at it like, oh, you won. But ultimately, I say, I have a deeper meaning. I have a bigger purpose. I could reach more people from behind the camera than I can from behind the computer. But look at me now, behind the computer, behind the camera, trying to reach people. Life is funny, funny.
Your experiences in Baltimore and Virginia and Texas, did that change your perspective? I'm sure it changed your perspective on life in general, but like, did it change your perspective on New York?
Yes, absolutely. Because New York, we have that attitude and that that understanding that, we're always on the cutting edge of stuff, and, which is true. New York is definitely in the know on a lot of things. But, it made me look at home differently as an artist, because I felt like I saw so many people outside of New York chasing New York. And I was like, really? Like, this is where you need to be in order to get this done? Like, yeah, they're like, I remember so many people, if only I lived in LA, if only I lived in New York, I would be, and I felt like, I was like, yeah, but you're here now. Like, I think, you're home getting it done. And, I think for some people that did work, but I thought ultimately, like, growing up in New York, to be an artist, I mean, in your neighborhood I think it's somewhat strange. Oh, it was at a time, it's like, wait, what do you do? Like, what I'm saying? I live next to Robert De Niro, like, what I'm saying? Like, there was something strange about it. Like, kind of like what you said with being a nerd. I think there's something there that's kind of congruent. Like, being an artist at that time was just like, you're a what? Because there wasn't all this information being thrown to us to what it's like. Now you can watch somebody who's not even on the big screen tell you what a day in the life of an actor is like. So then it was so secretive and smoke and mirrored. But now, it's kind of common, what I'm saying? So being in these other places, yeah, absolutely changed my perspective. It made me look at home like, well, maybe that's an option. I was like, I always had the idea like, oh, I can always go home and, chase the dream. So yeah, I think, yeah, it definitely changed my perspective. And, it changed my perspective on a lot of things, like life, what your life should look like, and love and marriage, and what those things should be, what I'm saying? And I'm happy I came back, because I probably would have forced myself into this box of what my life should look like. I had everything I wanted living in Dallas. I had, I was living downtown Dallas in like a brand new apartment. I had I think I had a car that was a year ahead. I was just like, to me, I was like my parents would come down and say, why would you ever leave this? And I'm like, meaning, gotta have purpose. So, I believe, like, I took less to ultimately get the bigger prize.
At some point, I want to say it was last year, you, I saw a really disturbing video you had shared on Instagram. And my life has been, as yours is, and all of ours is, that it's been really busy. So I was just, upset, and, knew you could handle yourself and handle your own, and other people got videos of it. And then I saw that you were doing some activism. But basically what it appears to be is that, yes, last year, you basically had an unprovoked attack by the NYPD. The video starts where the cops are saying, you need to get off the train, you're under arrest.
Well, that's the thing. They never said I was under arrest. Even to this day, they never said that. That's what made it confusing.
Can you just explain what you just said again?
Sir, come off the train.
Can you explain to me what you just said
Sir,
again?
listen, if you don't come off, I'm giving you a lawful order to come off the train.
For what?
Sir, you crossed through the doors of a moving train. It's a violation of transit rules. Come off the train.
Come off the train?
And you're holding up the whole train.
I'm not holding up the train. Y'all are holding up the train.
Sir, I'm telling you to come off the train.
You're asking me to come
I'm giving you
off
a
the
lawful order to come off the train. You're being detained.
I'm being detained for
If
what?
you don't come off, I'm going to use force.
You're going to use force? I'm
Yes,
recording that. You're going to use force as I'm recording you.
Sir,
I just want to make sure I'm getting this on paper. Y'all are going to use force.
You're not complying. You're not complying with a lawful order.
I will comply, but I'm just saying.
Well, you're not complying. You haven't been
I will comply, but I need to
off,
understand why I'm coming off the train.
Sir, I'm telling you to come off the train where you're being detained.
Why?
I just told you.
Yo, everybody can hear and see y'all. I want you to explain to them too why I'm coming off the train.
Sir, come off the train.
Why?
I'm gonna use force if
Yo,
you
why
don't
would
comply.
you use force? You gonna use force on everybody?
Because you're not complying. Come off the
All right,
train.
yo, I'm just letting you. I'm just getting
Come off
this.
the train
I'm
right
getting
now.
This, I'm getting this too. I'm getting this.
All right,
too.
do me a favor.
Everybody
Go
can
over
see
there.
y'all.
Turn
Every
around.
single person can
Turn
see
around.
y'all.
Put your hands behind your back.
For what?
Turn around. Put your hands behind your back.
Why am I putting my hands behind my back?
Place me under arrest.
Hey, you don't need to be doing that, okay?
Just letting y'all know, I'm not
Guys, let
doing
the
that.
train go.
I got off the train and you trying to
Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back.
For what?
Why are you cover him? He's not even doing nothing. What's the problem? How do you sleep at night? Whoa! Stop! No, stop! Everybody! Why? What did he do? What's your badge number? What's your badge number?
Badge number, please. Badge number. Don't push me. Use the force, bitch. Let her go.
What the fuck?
Nah, I got you. Clear. Clear. All your badge numbers.
What are you? What? Oh my God! No! What did I do?
You did nothing. You did nothing.
Oh my God! I didn't do anything! Yo! What the?
What's your problem?
She did not do anything. This is, I'm calling your manager.
Can we call someone?
Supervisor. Y'all need to call the supervisor right now. Call the supervisor. Call the supervisor.
Can we call someone for you?
Yo, you been her up against the.
What is she under arrest for? For what? For what?
No, it's not.
Dumbass.
What?
You need to uncuff her right now. Pepper spraying him for no reason, and then I just said
Everybody do nothing.
Yeah, no. Abusive power right here. Right in front of our faces.
Nah, let both of them go.
Right in front of our faces.
This train's going to stay right here until these two people are let go.
Please share what happened.
It's funny because it happened on Valentine's Day, which is funny to me. It's like, the day you're supposed to be showing so much love, the cops are worried about the worst things. And I was leaving an open mic. I remember I went to open mic. I had just did really well. Like when you do really well in an open mic as a comedian or as a comic, you're on a high. It's like when you do good in a play. You leave, you're like, damn, like you could do a play and drink and never get drunk because you're just on this high. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I was just on this high. I'm going over like the things that went well, the things that didn't. And I'm just, I was getting back home to, attend to my father because I'm like somewhat of a caretaker at home, and just a good day. Like it was like, damn, like I'm feeling good. It's Valentine's Day, hopefully, there will be somebody you could come home to, So yeah, I remember being like at I believe Delancey Street on the J train. That's why I usually switch to get. I'm in the Bed-Stuy area in Brooklyn, and yeah, I remember like there was this train car where if you never rode the NYC Transit, this sometimes you get on a train and this is a homeless person and this is their train. Like you know what I'm saying? It's like you don't even want to sit near it. You just want to separate yourself from it. And I saw so many people doing it, but because I was in this bubble, like I'm rewatching. Like a common practice in stand-up is taping yourself and going over your work. So I had taped myself just then. So I'm sitting on a train rewatching myself and going over the jokes. I look up and everyone's gone. It's just me and this homeless person on the train. I'm like, oh, this isn't the car for me. So I ended up going like further back in the train, and some people were going like out of the train doors. Some people were going between train cars, which is fine if the train is not moving, which it wasn't. You know what I'm saying? So I went through the train door, wasn't moving. I guess I don't know what happened in those moments because I wasn't paying attention. But there were cops on the train because seldomly there are cops on the train, and they saw all these people going. They instead of focusing on whatever was happening with this homeless man on the train, they must have chose to focus on me, which I think was their first mistake. So maybe like 2 stops later, not like one stop was a long stop. When you go from Manhattan to Brooklyn, then it was like one stop into Brooklyn. I believe it was the Hughes Street station on a J train. And it was so funny that my back was turned. Before you see any of that footage, what happened prior is my back's turned to them. I'm standing at the door. So they're behind me trying to get my attention. And I'm paying them absolutely no mind because I'm in my phone going over the footage. So when like I look up and I'm like, why haven't we moved? And I'm seeing everybody kind of like I'm seeing people look at me per se, but not. So I turn around and there's 4 policemen standing behind me like, hey, come off the train. I'm like, what's going on? Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm an easy person to talk to. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? It's like, we need you to step off the train. I was like, well, I have a father at home I take care of. My uncle's in the hospital, so I kind of need y'all to get on the train and we could talk about this on the way. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, even in a jokingly way, having this conversation with them. And they're like, no, we need you to step off the train. I'm like, well, what's going on? I'm just asking questions. But because I had my phone on me, the smartest thing that I did, I was like, I need to record this because God forbid something happens. This is my only protection, unfortunately. So I believe that even the people on the train, there was another angle, you could see it. Like they were like, yo, leave him alone. Like, it was such a wrong place, wrong time situation. And I was just like, look, man, like whatever happens, I have it on video and I'm not gonna you know what I'm saying? And plus my grandfather was a police officer. So I have like such a different perspective on what it is being a police officer. He's a police officer in the Bronx in the 1980s. You know what I'm saying? So that's probably like the hardest time maybe to be a police. So I have such a respect and reverence, not necessarily for police per se, but for people who, try to do things in the right way. So I think this individual, I believe his name was Emil Pratt. He's just one of those police officers that doesn't handle things correctly. And now that they have been putting the police officers on platforms, you get a couple bad apples there. And I believe I was just victim to one of those. So even if you can see in the video, like I'm literally following his direction after, having a back and forth conversation, and he still chose to pepper spray me with no probable cause or anything. It's like, listen, I'm like, you guys don't even know who you're pepper spraying. Like I was telling them like, because after you get pepper spray, it's my first time ever being pepper sprayed. You can't see for maybe like 30 minutes, I want to say, or it takes time to wear off. I'm telling them like, yo, you guys are picking the wrong person. You know what I'm saying? Even it's funny, a woman on the train with me went and fought them, stood up for me. And I was like, yo, I'm not even doing anything. And now you have a woman arrested. And so it was just like, I think I look at that situation as such a, like it was a spark to what was going on at the time. Because even shortly after that, I want to say not even 10 days later, this guy was, this same officer was arresting a little kid on the train for dancing. I'm like, this is just a bad person. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, all cops are bad, but I am one of those people, especially now, that are like, yo, like, you gotta really come correctly if I'm gonna even look at you the same, because, y'all are all on the same boat here. So I just think like, it brought awareness to what was going on, especially on the train specifically, because there's a lot of things. Think about since last Valentine's Day, how many incidents we've heard of on maybe like a coronavirus New York or NYPD scoop of incidences that occurred on the train. This guy was recently stabbed on the train. So it's just like, it's already a high octane environment. So for them to make a decision like that was insane. And because I guess unfortunately, because I don't want to make this a race thing, but because of the color of my skin, and I'm coming at you respectfully, but also challenging what's going on. Like, well, am I under arrest? Maybe they deal with individuals that look just like me who don't understand protocol. And I'm like, well, I understand. You have to tell me why I'm being arrested before I'm getting arrested. So it's just, it was a situation that they were just pissed off about. Because I remember even before, I mean, in the video it might be there. they were like, yo, you're holding up the train. I'm like, no, you guys are holding up the train. If you really think about it, like you're trying to get me to come off with a lecture that you could have on the way home. And, I know the cops felt bad because they just thought I was lying. They thought I was lying about my father, lying about my family situation at the time. But I remember like it wasn't up until I had to call my mother and put it on speakerphone, and they were like, yeah, he's saying something about his father needs a caretaker and his uncle's in the hospital, which I live with. And she was like, yeah, that's absolutely true. Like he's the only person that can be here in this time. Like, y'all are inconveniencing his whole family. And that's when I guess maybe the empathy started. But I felt like at that point it was way too late, and plus I think the funniest part of the whole thing was, like I told you, I had just got off stage. So like, I think, when you just go off stage as a comic, you're the freshest ever. Like your wit, your everything is so fresh. So I remember when my eyes even became like, when I could see again, I'm like in this police station and there's all these cops around me. And it became like a roast session. Like I'm just roasting all of these cops, and I'm telling them stuff like, yo, like, this is gonna be everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, but not knowing how that would even occur. But, I think the smartest thing I did in that evening, and it was funny, before that play with the Navy, that was the day before the first rehearsal of that play, I remember, because I left the station, went home, showered, and went to the first rehearsal, super fresh, super irate. But yeah, I remember like, I had to make a phone call, and that's when I posted the video. I was like in the cell posting the video rather than making the phone call. And so by the time I got out, my whole Instagram was left. Like it was just, I was hearing from people I hadn't heard from in years, and yeah, I think it was an unfortunate situation. And I do still to this day feel very just. And then you referencing me speaking out because of that situation, so many people reached out to me. There's groups of people in the city that protest all the time about wrongful acts done by the NYPD, and they're very much, their whole cause is going out and making sure that these guys are acting, constitutionally. And these guys reached out to me. They was like, yo, man, this just happened, and you might want to come speak out on it. And I chose to. I said, yeah, sure. I'm not going to refrain from speaking the truth. This is the truth. It's right in front of your eyes. It's not like, I'm making up a story. And at this, I guess protest, if you want to call it that, I was assaulted by a cop.
Yo, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening.
Oh, it's being replaced.
Because he wasn't part of it.
That's what that called. Yeah.
It's all right.
Oh, yeah, hold on.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Carl Ellis Grant. I'm an actor, writer, director, producer, comic, and Brooklyn native. I'm also an aeronautical engineer. I used to work for NASA. I used to program jets for Lockheed Martin. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, I was harassed by Bill Pratt, Sergeant Bill Pratt, for no reason. I'm still trying to figure out why. I don't believe he should be a cop. I come from a family of cops. My grandfather is a cop.
So it's like, listen, y'all are making this bad situation worse. But thankfully, I think the one thing I take away from that is, people got to see me not retaliate in public and realize there is another way. Like, we come from, the civil rights movement and all these things where these people our predecessors were being attacked with dogs and hosed and things that I couldn't even imagine. So I was like, yo, I don't even know how I was able to keep composure, but I was like, I thought like, in hindsight, like I can handle a little pepper spray. I can handle a butthurt policeman trying to assault me, because the people before me took so much, strife just to get their word across. I could have easily went the other way and never came out, and but I feel like because I had such responsibility at the time, with my family and with my career, I was like, I was in the biggest play of my life at the time. So I'm like, nah, there's no way that I can let something that I didn't bring on myself destroy me. As unfortunate as the situation is, I'm just appreciative and gracious that I'm still here, because it could have been worse. We see so many times when situations like that happen, and Ahmaud Arbery can't give his side of the story. You know what I'm saying? George Floyd can't give his side of the story. So, I'm not in no way, shape, or form comparing myself to them, because it's nowhere on the magnitude of them. I look at it like it was just something that had to happen as a part of your journey. And it was something that was made to not break you. They got to just get their act together. Same cop, Emil Pratt, arrested a kid not only maybe a week and a half later. I was like, look, I'm like, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But is this 13-year-old child wrong? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I remember even seeing the officer the next day. Like, I remember getting off the train the following day and seeing the officer, and he was like dealing with something with an ambulance. I'm like, wow, like you're still at it. I still had a great attitude, unbeknownst to people. Like I had cracked jokes at him the next day. I was just like, oh wow, this is what you do every day, I guess. That's why when you asked me about it and saying like, you comfortable? I was like, yeah, I'm very much comfortable. I'm not stricken by this. This is not something this didn't make me, and it's not gonna break me.
Yeah, that says a lot about you, my friend. I mean, in our culture right now, there has been kind of this thing where people are championing their own victimhood in a lot of ways. The NYPD has a larger budget than other countries' militaries, and they're a gang. The history of police is not a good one. The reason why they exist is not a good reason. So aside from white supremacy and the infiltration of the police forces and what they've been utilized to do and how that's only hurt the Black community, aside from all of that, there has been an element of our society that has, I don't know, everybody's like eager to scream victim about a lot of things. And it's easy in a situation like yours. It would be easy to say, obviously I'm a victim. Obviously.
I agree.
And that's not you championing victimhood. That's looking at reality. This is a situation. I'm a person on a train and someone just attacked me. You're a victim.
Correct.
End of the story. But for you to take the stance you have and to have the mindset you've had and to take the actions you've taken, it makes you're a big person, my friend.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Nah, I really do, because yeah. You know what I thought about? I thought, like, as somebody who spoke on it professionally through like podcasts and stuff, I'm like, it couldn't be me. We all have that. We see it on Instagram, we see it on these platforms of media, and you're like, it couldn't be me. But when it is you, you don't even know what to do. And I'm just happy I was present and clear of mind in the moment. And as a result, because you're right, they are a gang. And like, it sucks. I have family that's police. And I feel like this incident it showed me the priorities and the politics of the people around me. And I'm like, look, I can't even really focus on this. The more energy I give this, the worse it's going to get. But I know that even now, think about it, we're almost a year out. We're about a month away from a year out of it happening. I'm talking about it with you. And even my feelings toward it are still somewhat the same. Because I had so many opportunities to speak and say, hey, this is how I felt. This is what happened to me. Like I was emotional. You know, I was distraught, I was angry, but by no way, shape, or form was did I feel sorry for myself. You know, I still went out there and did 4 plays and 6 films and 9 comedy shows and, you know, and 6 writers' rooms. You know what I mean? I still went out and did the things that make and who knows how many open mics that made me complete as an individual. You know what I'm saying? And I can't, you know, I only can probably attest that to, you know, my beliefs. You know what I'm saying? I'm a believer. I believe in God, and I believe, you know, it happened, you know, and you know, it's your condition is not your circumstance, you know, and my condition at the time was insane. Like I can only, like, I'm not gonna sit here and fabricate it. Like I was cooking 3 square meals a day at that time for another person. I was checking on someone. My condition was absolutely insane at that time. But now looking at it a year later, it's 11 months later, it's if I let that one small thing that occurred on that one day for that one time speak for the whole year, then I'll be doing myself a disservice, you know. And yeah, it doesn't mean I'm not angry. Doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean I'm not um doesn't mean I don't have specific feelings for the cops. I still do, you know. I see things all the time and I shake my head and I'm just like, wow, like, you know. And you know what, it actually helps me now when I'm out on the street. And like, I remember maybe like 5 or 6 months ago, I might have saw some kids maybe getting in a fight across the street, and I end up going and just talking to them. Something I would have never really did. You know, New Yorkers, we have the mind our business policy, but with that, I never did. Something made me just go and talk to them and say, hey, look, like, you know, any we don't have any support out here. You know, we're our own support system, so I have to talk to you guys. And y'all might look at me as just like the older guy that's just lecturing y'all, but in actuality, if you knew what I've been through, this would hold a deeper meaning. So, you know, my goal is to just to be a staple of my community, you know, where I live, who I interact with, and to also just be and just really transfer it to something else, use it, you know, don't forget it. I remember in that play, there was a scene where, like I said, my character is in jail and he makes a decision that's different from everybody, all his Navy men. And I remember the first one scene, I'm like arguing with them and leaving out in an angry way. And that following scene, it might have been like maybe a minute or maybe like 5 minutes later, I got to come back on stage drunk and distraught. And there was nothing that brought me more into that moment than rewatching the video of me getting pepper sprayed. You know what I'm saying? And there was nothing more that made me feel and allowed me to empty my cup than watching a real situation that occurred, and allowing it to flow through me, you know, for the following scene. And it just became one of my best moments personally. It's like one of those like I can win awards, anything can happen moving forward, but I'll always remember just that opportunity and actually using my pain to evoke emotion in it. I think, yeah, man, even, and like I said, that was fresh. That was like the same month, you know, the following week. So I've had this same attitude since the incident. It's not like, you know, I went through phases, but my attitudes never changed. You know, I think about my late grandparents and what they would think, and you know, I would want to do what would make them proud. I would want even my parents. You know, I would want them to see it and be like, "Wow, like it took a lot for you to do that." Like, yeah, it did. You know, but I did it. You know, and yeah, I can't complain. Even to this day, I can't complain. You know, I wouldn't want it to happen again. I'll be honest. Like, if we had to be complete, I would absolutely want, if we had to play the whole thing over, I would just want it not to happen at all. But I wouldn't change a thing, you know, because sometimes you need those things. You know, it's like your life was flatlining, and then you got that was like a heartbeat in my life, you know. Like, not to say my life was dead before that. My life was very exciting, you know, but that was like a spike in my life that I'll never forget, you know. So yeah, I do appreciate you for even asking me if I was comfortable about talking about it. And because yeah, I could have easily come on here and been the angry person about, or the woe is me individual, but yeah, it's just not me, man. It's just not me.
Well, like I said in the beginning, obviously your head is on straight. Like, you're a solid individual because you handled it the right way in a way that's a good example for anybody else that has to unfortunately end up in these situations. And I will say also, you're such an actor because like me, like all of us, at some point you find yourself having life experiences and first thing you think is, oh, I can use this later. There's a Jungian concept of you need to experience hell to experience heaven. These experiences have made me a more well-rounded human being.
Yeah.
But they've added to the betterment of my craft, which is my life's calling. And so, yeah, all of that to say, you're such a fun actor. And
I appreciate. No, you know it's funny. That's a compliment because I feel like I've worked so hard to even be considered an actor because I always felt like an outsider when it comes to that because I just don't. Certain things I just don't understand, and aside from the things I've studied, I feel like it's kind of like when you have weight and you lose weight, you always see yourself bigger. Like, that's not enough. This 80 wasn't enough. Let's lose 120. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate that because I'm telling you, even to this day, I've been in films, I've seen myself on the big screen, I've opened up festivals, I've been, but at the same time, in those moments, I still never, it's gonna be hard for me. Like, it's even hard when I tell people I'm an actor. I'd rather even tell people I'm an artist. Yeah, I don't have much of an ego when it comes to acting. And I think that helps me as well. I try to let it go. Hearing that from you means everything. Even when we work together, I'm like, all right, I'm still confused how the hell I got that job. I'm like, yo, they gotta be playing a joke on me. I guess that's the imposter syndrome.
Considering how busy I know you are, and in the material we covered, I respect you for everything. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Listen, I'm even on the way to a networking event now. Like, I have a friend of mine, she does networking events every month. So that was the biggest thing I got from last year. Be of support to the people around you. So this is me being of support to you. And I appreciate you for supporting me, and where I am in my career and my journey, things inside and outside of acting. So, this is not something that I take lightly, Isaac. I really appreciate you.
Right on, brother.